Hello, my name is Rocco Strangio, and I'm the host of the Law, AI, and Money podcast. I bring on attorneys, engineers, and entrepreneurs to unravel the world of AI and to discuss how it'll affect the legal profession. Today, I am joined with Scott Kveton, an entrepreneur who has over 20 years of experience building Web 1, 2, and 3 businesses. Over the years, Scott has created many important companies, from Airship, Odava, to OpenID and Open Source Lab. Chances are you've received a push notification sometime today, and that innovation, among others, came from Scott's ingenuity. Now, Scott's newest company, CaseMark, is looking to disrupt the legal industry. CaseMark uses generative AI to create attorney work product, like deposition summaries, medical chronologies, and case narratives. In our conversation, Scott and I discuss CaseMark's success and impact on the legal industry. We talk about some of the use cases for cryptocurrency and blockchain technology and the need for alternative energy solutions in our ever-increasing demand economy. We hope you enjoy our conversation.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Living the dream one day at a time. Thanks for having me, Rocco. Appreciate
You
it.
got it. Well, thank you for coming on. I try to get attorneys, engineers, but I also try to get entrepreneurs on, and I feel like there's nobody more equipped to be, defined as an entrepreneur than you are.
For better or worse, yeah.
I wanted to ask you, you're pretty much a serial entrepreneur, quite literally, and it's interesting to me. I feel like entrepreneurs have specific characteristics. What are some of the characteristics that you think embodies a true entrepreneur?
Oh, wow, that's a toughie. I think our inability to work for other people, I think that's probably the number one big one. I think depending on the type of entrepreneur that you are, depending if you've had success or not, and again, like I have just as many failures as I have successes, as it were. And I think it's those failures that kind of hone your ability to seek out the next thing that might be successful. And I think that sort of hones your gut instinct. And I think the other thing that entrepreneurs have, I think is sort of core to what they do is having this ability to look at something and not take in all the data and go with your gut. Because if you had all the data, you probably wouldn't go down the path that you go down, which I know sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's because of that it's been really interesting to kind of tackle these different spaces. And I have been a serial entrepreneur now for the better part of 20 years. And whether it was with, open source or doing mobile or doing point of sale stuff or doing, Web3, all of those have been different beasts. And if I had all the information going into any one of those fields, I probably wouldn't have gone after it. But it's because I didn't have all the information that I was able to kind of look at it from a different perspective. At least that's my 2 cents on it. Yeah.
I mean, not having, I think there's some people who are a little bit too practical in the sense that they look at all the possible things that could go wrong in any situation and they sort of stop themselves from doing something that they could otherwise manage to do. There's a lot of people that are easier said than done people. And then there's people who kind of just tell themselves like, oh, it's no problem. I can do that. And they get it done.
Yeah, I think, one of the examples that comes to mind is we started a company a bunch of years ago. And I say we, is that my co-founder and I have been working together for the last 13, 14 years. And we started a company in the mobile space, specifically around like push notifications. So those pop-ups you get on your phone, like we did the first company that did those. And I can remember back when we started it, like we had some customers who needed our service, and we sort of just followed that thread. And as we went down that path and we went to go try to raise money, we failed miserably at it because we had so many people telling us, no, the carriers are going to kill you because SMS is what everybody uses. You're not going to be able you're going to get crushed by all these other people, and I was like, oh, geez, wow, boy, I'm a moron. I shouldn't have gone down this path. But then it turned out, and I remember getting laughed out of a partner meeting years ago because I'd come up with a TAM, a total addressable market of like $1.2 billion in 5 years. And they literally walked me out of the partner meeting and they said, look, here's a little tip for you. If you're going to embarrass somebody like that, at least give them a heads up, because you made me look really dumb in that meeting. And I was like, oh, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. And I was wildly wrong, because the actual TAM turned out to be like 5 billion in 5 years. And so I was actually way off, below what I thought it should be, or below what it actually was going to be. And so I took it to heart. And it's those kinds of things that, you learn as an entrepreneur, like, oh, actually, you need to trust your gut and you have to follow your gut. And maybe you're wrong, but at least you're wrong on your terms and you won't second guess yourself. Anyways, just anecdotal,
Wow, that's unbelievable. This podcast is about artificial intelligence, as you know, also about law, but also there's a component of it about money. And before we get into the AI, I was just interested to know, because I know you worked in and around Web3. And for those of my viewers that don't know, maybe you can explain that quickly, and then we'll go into the
Well, so the challenge, I mean, I'll probably do this a disservice, but I'll do my best. But really at the root of sort of Web3 and crypto is this idea of a blockchain. And the blockchain itself, the best way to describe it is effectively a transparent ledger that anyone can verify. In other words, here's a list of things that have happened on this ledger, and anyone can get in there and look at it and see it. And it's immutable. In other words, you can't go in and delete it or change it. You know that this is what happened. And that's actually a wildly powerful thing when it comes to wanting to be able to, like, say, track inventory or track, sports memorabilia. You'd love to know the provenance of exactly where that came from. So if there was a transparent ledger that you could, track, that's super, super interesting. And the example that I give is, think about if you go on eBay and you buy some, sports memorabilia, you sort of, you look for a listing, you find that person, you buy that, you transact it, and then that sort of provenance is gone other than inside of eBay. But eBay won't say this person bought it and this person, this person, this person, this person. And oh, by the way, if a third party could get in there and verify that, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was sort of the magic of behind the scenes of how blockchain worked. The problem is it became this speculative component and became a currency, which is kind of what led to all these challenges around, scams and NFTs and all these things. When ultimately at its core, this idea of a transparent ledger is super, super interesting. And in 15, 20 years, blockchain will use for a bunch of different things once we sort of, move on from this whole concept of the speculative nature of quote unquote crypto.
Yeah.
At least that's my 2 cents on it.
Oh, yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. When I was, and I'm an accounting major before I obtained my law degree. And when I was at college learning about accounting, when I was at the School of Accounting at University at Buffalo, they forced us to take a seminar on blockchain because they viewed it so highly and said that, down the line, this could very well replace accountants. It could supplement the work.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly would be interesting.
I mean, technology that we need to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously certain things from an accounting perspective that maybe you don't want on a public ledger, right? But you can also do private blockchains as well. So it allows you to still be, transparent and immutable, but inside of a sort of a safety place. I mean, it's definitely interesting, but I don't think it's going to sweep the nation or sweep the world like people thought. And this idea, Web 1 was essentially the first internet that we had during the dot-com boom bust in the 90s, early 2000s. Yep. Web 2 was sort of this servicification and moving things to the cloud, getting off of like on-prem servers and things like that. And then this idea was, Web 3 is the pushing everybody's data into these transparent, blockchains. And it's like, well, it's actually not really what that's supposed to be. So I almost feel like Web 3 as a term is almost a mislabel, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like we could talk about that forever, and
yeah,
decentralization, that's another buzzword that comes with Web 3, but I want to shift to the focus of this episode and talk about your company, CaseMark. If you could briefly just tell us what CaseMark is and what it seeks to do in the legal space.
Yeah, we started this a little over a year ago, and we're really focused on building a platform that makes it easy for attorneys to essentially create work products leveraging artificial intelligence. So we kind of liken it to the easy button for AI for attorneys that won't get them in trouble. In other words, we've taken into account the considerations around security, privacy. We don't train with your data, those kinds of things. And today, we have a series of these easy buttons that deliver, work product that attorneys need today. So it's a really great way for them to kind of get into AI. In other words, hey, let me try AI in a place that's safe, that allows me to generate a deposition summary or medical chronology or medical narrative or tax return summary, those kinds of things that they can really understand, and then they can kind of ease their way into AI. And I think one of the big challenges we see in the space is so many folks have talked about how it's going to absolutely change the legal industry, and it will. It's going to take a decade, and you don't start from the top and push down some solution. Instead, you have to find a way to navigate not only the how people use the software today, but where it's going to change things from a bottoms up perspective. And that's kind of the approach that we've taken. We're an early stage company, have raised a small bit of money, about 1.7 million. Gradient, who's Google's seed fund, led the round. We had a bunch of other great investors, Rex from Cambrian, and a variety of other folks. And then we're just heads down, building interesting, compelling product for our customers. We've got, 130 enterprise customers today. Passed through $1 million run rate. Hoping to exit this year at about a $2 million run rate. And it's just, it's been really fun to watch this thing just go like gangbusters while following this path of finding our sort of true customers that really need this and that are willing to try it and want to use it over and over again. So it's been an absolute blast. We're having fun.
Yeah. A lot of AI companies that I see in the space tend to work in conjunction with other platforms. Do you guys integrate with any other companies?
We do. We actually have done integrations with Clio and another company called Smokeball. These are case management solutions. So the idea here is that you can be inside of your case management solution. You can right click and you can essentially CaseMark a file. So you might CaseMark a deposition transcript, and then we can give you a nice page line summary. And for us, the ultimate results that we deliver are like PDF or Word documents. And the reason we do that is that's something that attorneys today are used to using. It's how they sort of pattern match and how they can see value from it. More importantly, they can then drop that into their case management solution. They can forward that onto the insurance adjuster, and that insurance adjuster doesn't have to have a login to CaseMark. They can just read that output and understand how it works. Now, there are things that we actually put in those that allow them to go, okay, well, I want to ask the next question, like of this transcript or of this summary. And that sort of leads them down the path of starting to figure out how they can lean more into AI. But instead of saying, hey, attorney or associate or paralegal, completely change how you do everything today. And here's this new process for doing something that you have to learn how to do. And by the way, every moment you're spending learning how to use this new piece of software, you're not billing, right? That's one of the biggest challenges that attorneys have in adopting new technologies. So we've tried to just introduce ourselves from a one-click work product perspective. Can we deliver something that they're already doing today, do it better, faster, more succinct, and potentially more accurate, and ease them into the next wave of how these things are going to change how they work, but not reduce their billable rate, reduce their billable hours, or eliminate headcount. Really, ultimately, what's going to happen with AI, and I don't think the mainstream media talks enough about this, whether we like it or not, artificial intelligence is going to make it easier to litigate, which means there's going to be a lot more cases for folks to have to deal with. So if we can build a solution that allows the paralegal or associate to elevate to effectively air traffic controller so that they can manage not 75 or 100 cases, but 250 or 300 cases, then that's a really powerful thing. And I think inevitably that's what's going to have to happen. I don't see anybody eliminating headcount anytime soon.
Do you think these companies and this new technology is shifting also the way that we may settle cases, maybe through alternative dispute resolution, for example?
It's funny. There's another company that pitched me on something like this. They're like, well, if we have all the discovery from both the plaintiff and, defense, shouldn't the AI just be able to negotiate a settlement? I'm like,
That's
you
what
have
I mean.
never met a plaintiff's attorney, right? Like that's bonkers, right? They want the chance to get in front of a jury of, 12 jurors and be able to present their case. And so, to me, that's where I think that's going to be really, really tough. But where I think it's going to be really interesting is in dealing with things like flat fee cases. Those are tough ones that a lot of firms have to take, especially insurance defense firms. They have some percentage that have to be flat fee cases just so that they get the other stuff from these insurance companies. And so I think alternative of settlement types of things, it might come along, but I don't see that happening anytime soon, because we all know how plaintiffs firms, and I have to be a little careful, because the reason I say this about plaintiffs attorneys is because my wife happens to be an attorney. She's got a practice here in Oregon, and they do Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. So she's on the insurance defense side. So and it's funny because the plaintiffs call her on the dark side, where she says they're on the. Anyways, you know the drill, right?
That's where the bias
You're
comes.
on one side, you're not on the side of Anyways,
There's definitely teams to it. There's definitely teams.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's quite comical actually. But
red, blue. But I mean, it's interesting you say that, and in my opinion, I mean that's inherent in the legal protections we afford individuals to go to trial before their peers, right? And, I almost think sometimes these technologies are a little bit defense oriented, in the sense that, when you go before a jury, there's some metaphysical things happening there that we're playing on each other and the emotions. That's something I don't know if AI can at the present moment pick up on. Maybe in the future it can, but those are important things that I think need to continue to have influence over trials and plaintiff settlements.
Well, I mean, if you think about where this potentially goes, I mean, like if you think about jury selection, the jury's asking, or the attorneys are asking questions of the jury to uncover potential bias. Will they be interesting for this? And then they introduce their own bias because they might have things built into how they think. But now there's tools that can read sentiment analysis, right? And then there's going to be real-time tools that say like, oh, how did they respond to that question? They might be fibbing. Like there's all kinds of things that are coming along that are kind of, I mean, to a certain extent, a little scary in these things because we don't know, Yeah, I mean, the technology is still so early. But you're right. I mean, when it comes down to from a technology perspective, the defense side definitely has a lot more they can pull up, whether it's experts or the social media. Like people just forget how much stuff they post on social media and that it can be discoverable. Even if they think they deleted it, it probably isn't deleted. Like it's so fascinating just to see like how many cases my wife has won because she's been able to see somebody's social media that says they actually fell and posted on social media about how they tripped down the stairs, and then a week later they went to someplace and slipped and fell, and now they're saying that caused it. Well, wait a minute, we can introduce a bit of doubt here. And so again that becomes a data problem, and how do you sift through all that data and find those things quickly so that you can sort of bring it to bear. I mean it's quite fascinating, and I'm new to the legal tech space. Again, if I knew what I knew now, I probably wouldn't have started this business, because had I asked people, they would say, oh no, there's too much technology in this space. There's no way you could start a company. There's no way you'll be able to sell to attorneys, like just all those kinds of things that I've heard. And yet we've been able to find a path forward because we're not listening to all those folks who've been doing this for a long time. We're just sort of following a path that we've been able to map, trusting our instincts. So, yeah.
Data and security it comes in hand with AI. I find it interesting how easy people are willing to give up some of their data. I mean, right now there's data concerns, and people are quick to say that we need more data protections. But if you give somebody a short-term benefit, and there's not a mainstream media push in the background, I think people are very willing to give up their data, and I think they don't care as much. I see it all the time, and AI is really exposing that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there's sort of an anecdote that says like if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. So like in the case of like social media, for years, it's our browsing habits that have been effectively mined to build these algorithms that then present us with things that'll keep us scrolling, right? Which means they can deliver more ads and all that kind of stuff. And so that's very, very interesting. And I think the other piece here is, these large language models, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or others, were effectively created by a whole bunch of public data on the internet, whether we like it or not. And while they say today that, oh, well, we're not training with your data anymore, you need to actually be able to verify that. And so, whether it's a lot of folks in this space are, saying that they don't train with data, but they don't actually know, or they claim they're making claims that they're not actually able to back up. And so we've spent a lot of time thinking through those implications to make sure that not only the third parties that we're leveraging AI from, that we have those same assurances that we've crossed those T's and dotted those I's, because it's absolutely critical. Because in the case of legal, I mean, so what if my emails maybe get out, my personal emails, that gets used to be trained for something? I'm not super worried about that, but if it's a sensitive case that maybe has a protective order, and then, a year down the road, you could ask a question of an LLM and it surfaces that data that was used to train that's tied to that protective order. That's really, really, really bad. And I think a lot of people don't really think through those implications. Anything that, to a certain extent, anything that's been trained to create the LLM potentially can be recalled by the LLM. So, that's a huge, huge challenge. And it's one that creates a lot of uncertainty for attorneys when thinking about adopting this technology. And it's one of the biggest challenges we've seen from an adoption perspective. So we have to have a good story around that. And I think we've gotten really good at explaining to attorneys and putting their minds at ease around that.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I've enjoyed our conversation. I want to pick your brain on one last thing. You seem very ahead of the curve when it comes to technology in general. What do you think is the next front, the next wave, and next mainstream idea?
Oof, boy, that's a toughie. I mean, I'm still knee deep in the AI stuff, and we're just scratching the surface. I mean, I think the thing that's the quote that always comes to mind for me, especially with these disruptive technology cycles, and it's something that Bill Gates said years and years and years ago, which is anytime there's a new disruptive technology, whether it was the internet or the iPhone, just something that really changes the paradigm. I think we and again, this is to paraphrase Bill Gates, but we overestimate what will happen in 2 years and underestimate what will happen in 10. And I think, as far as AI is concerned, there's nothing greater. And I think if you go, fast forward 25 or 30 years from now and look back, while people will talk about the internet and the mobile phone and things like that, what they'll really talk about is when AI came along. In other words, that will be the demarcation from post, pre-technology to post-technology is really when AI came along. At least that's my 2 cents on it. But in terms of, what's coming next, I mean, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things around energy. I mean, I think energy is going to be one of the biggest challenges for us, and we need to either re-embrace nuclear or, whether it's fusion or like some alternative form, because we can't just keep generating, all these LLM models from the current grids that we have. So figuring that out is going to be interesting. I just don't know if there's any really, really interesting advancements coming along anytime soon.
I'm the last person to speak on this, but I think we came up with a fusion reactor that was net positive energy, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's commercially viable yet, right? Like, yeah, that's the challenge. Can you do this stuff at scale? And so we'll have to see. I mean, I don't think we've given fission enough of a chance either, right? Because we 3 Mile Island and things like that. Although they're reactivating 3 Mile Island, and I'm okay with it as well, because when you think about, we're talking about technology now that we have to manage these processes that we didn't have 50 years ago, and we did it pretty effectively. Could have been better, obviously, but I just think there's so much more technology now that we can do that we'd just be crazy not to try and take advantage of those.
For sure. The whole discussion with nuclear, I think, was affected by those various disasters that happened, and that kind of shut off the public opinion.
For sure. I mean, 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl basically, really did us in. And, look, I mean, we're still paying for Chernobyl. That's a whole train wreck in and of itself. But, again, that was, I think, almost 40 years ago now. I guess it was 89, I think. So, yeah, 44 years ago, whatever it is. That's a long time. Actually, 89 slides. It's less than that. But anyways, don't make me do math on a podcast. For God's sake.
This is not a history
Okay,
podcast.
good.
Yeah, and maybe quantum computing would be the other one, but I don't want to derail too much. I want to thank you for coming on, Scott, sharing your company, CaseMark, and it was a pleasure talking with you.
Happy to. Thanks for having me, Rocco. Appreciate it.
Yes. Yep. Take care.
Hey, thanks for tuning into the Law AI Money podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, be sure to like and subscribe so we can keep the conversation going. Thank you.